Hi, ladies. Today we're going to be working in our packet on page 39 in order to solve the CGI problem. Make sure that you are recording all your work in your packet and using all of your CGI strategies. All right. So when we're looking at this problem, I really want you to make sure as I'm reading, you're determining if there's any information that is more important than other, or maybe if there's information that you don't necessarily need. So really pay attention to what the question is asking and if there's any information that maybe is irrelevant. So Mrs. Babs read 21 books. Each book had exactly 2,010 words in it. She sold 5 of her books for $4.95 each. How many words did Mrs. Babs read? All right, so Mrs. Babs read 21 books. Each book had exactly 2,010 words in it. She sold 5 of her books for $4.95 each. How many words did Mrs. Babs read? All right, so as we're reading through this problem, I want you to really think about what our quantities are and what the question is actually asking. So the first thing that I want to start with is actually the question. So it says, how many words did Mrs. Babs read? So you really want to think about what that unit is that you're focusing on because we have books, words, and money. So you want to think, what exactly does it want me to find? And it says, how many words? So think about that unit of words and what quantities in this problem are actually going to help me achieve that. So Mrs. Babs read 21 books. So we have 21 books that are being read. And then each book has exactly 2,010 words. So each book has 2,010 words in it. And then she's selling 5 of her books for $4.95. How many words did Mrs. Babs read? So I want you to ask yourself, is the amount of money that she sold 5 of her books for even relevant? Do we really care that 5 of her books were sold or that they were sold for $4.95? Because in our question it says, how many words did Mrs. Babs read? It's not necessarily asking us how much Mrs. Babs made when she sold her books. So this part right here where she's selling the books is irrelevant. It doesn't actually help us solve the problem. It's there just to kind of confuse you. So Mrs. Babs read 21 books. Each book had exactly 2,010 words in it. I'm going to take out that part and we want to know how many words Mrs. Babs read. So if you're able to eliminate that entire sentence and still figure out the answer to the question, then that means that that's irrelevant, that it's not helpful, that it's there just as kind of a distractor to confuse you. So at this point, I want you to go ahead, make sure that your quantities are listed, that you have this question written out on your paper. Remember, we rewrite the question or we write a question in our own words to help us better understand. You want to make sure that you have your equation with a variable and that if there's some sort of visual that helps you, feel free to put that in there, kind of that part whole strategy or method. So at this point, you can go ahead and pause your video, and when you're ready, join me and we will solve it together. Hi, ladies. At this point, you should have already solved your problem. We are on page 39, and today is Friday or Thursday, the 23rd. So please make sure that you are working on this problem and make sure that all of your parts of the problem have been solved before you actually are checking it with me. So take a look at this question. So we had 21 total books that Miss Babs read, and then each book, so the total words in one book was 2,010 words. And we want to know the total words that Miss Babs read. So you want to think about the question. The question said that each book had exactly 2010 words. And we know that word each can determine our operation. The word each tells us either to divide or multiply. And you want to ask yourself, do I want my quantity to get bigger or do I want it to get smaller? Is 2010 my whole? Is that the amount that I'm taking and breaking into smaller portions? Do we know the amount of words that Miss Babs read in all? Because if we did, then we would be able to make our answer smaller. But in this case, it's asking us how many words Miss Babs read, so we know we want to get bigger. Also, it's important to note that we have books and we have words, which are two different units. And it's important that if we have two different units that we acknowledge that we cannot add or subtract those numbers together because they are not the same unit. So in this case, we're actually left with one operation to choose from because we want our answer to get bigger, but we can't add them. So we want to make sure that we multiply. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our amount of books that we have and we're going to multiply it by the words that are in each book. Okay, so we have 21 books, so it'd be like if I drew out 21 boxes and put this number inside of it, that would kind of show me that repeated addition. But because we'd have to do that 21 times, that's not the most efficient, so we want to make sure that we do something that's efficient for a fifth grader. So in this case, we're going to be using multiplication. So at this point, we have several different options on how we could multiply these numbers together. We could do standard algorithm, we can do partial products, we can do lattice, or again, if you feel it necessary, you could do repeated addition by adding this number 21 times, or adding 21 2010 times, which again is not the most efficient, but it would get you to the correct answer. So I'm going to show a couple different strategies for you to check your work. Remember, if you're multiplying in order to find the answer, if you want to check your work, the operation would be division because it's the opposite. So I'm going to start with lattice. So I'm going to start with my larger quantity on top. And then my smaller quantity, which is 21, along the side. Remember, each digit along the side gets its own row, and each number along the top gets its own column. So there should be 4 columns and 2 rows. Then you want to go through and make sure that you're dividing each box in half diagonally. I like to go one box at a time just to make sure that they are in the correct spot, because if they're not, then it's going to get completely thrown off and it's going to mess up your answer. Anything times 0 is always going to be 0. 2 times 1 is 2. In the number 2, we have 0 tens and 2 ones. 2 times 0 is 0. And 2 times 2 is 4, which is 0 tens and 4 ones. And then along the bottom, we're going to do the same thing. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 1 is 1. 0 tens and 1 one. 1 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 1 is 2. Remember that first box is going to be the tens place, and the second is going to be the ones place. You want to make sure that you're recording that correctly. Now we're going to add. We have 0. 1 plus 0 plus 0 is 1. 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 2. 2 plus all these zeros is 2. And then 4. And then remember, when you do the lattice method, this along the bottom is going to be your answer, but you want to rewrite that because it can get confusing if it's not rewritten. So our answer is 4, 2, 2, 1, 0. And then you want to make sure you put your comma in the correct spot. So 1, 2, 3, comma. So now we're going to try the partial products method. And this is just going to be another way for you to check your work. So remember, if you would prefer to use the same strategy or the same operation and multiplication to check your work, you can do that as well. It does not have to be a different operation. You just want to try a different strategy. So I'm going to take my 2010 and I'm going to break it apart into its place values. So I would start with 2000 because the 2 in the thousands place represents 2000. I don't have to represent these zeros, but I do have to represent this 1. The 1 is in the tens place, which represents 10. And then same thing, the 2 represents 20. The 1 represents 1. So now I'm going to multiply these numbers together. 2 times 2 is 4. Add your 3 zeros, or 4 zeros. So you'll notice we already have a number that's going to get us close to 40,000. 1 times 2,000 is going to be 2,000. 2 times 10 is 2. Add your 1 0. 2 times 1 is 2. Add your 2 zeros. And then 1 times 10 is 10. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add together these 4 numbers. So we have 40,000. And we want to make sure you're lining up your digits in the correct place value. We have 2,000, we have 200, and we have 10. So if you notice, now we're going to take our zeros, our 1, our 2, our 2, and our 4, and then we have the exact same answer. So both of these different strategies gave us the exact same answer, which does tell me that most likely I am correct. And then last strategy I'm going to show you is going to be the standard algorithm. Remember that this strategy is a little bit trickier, and you want to make sure that you're super confident doing it before you attempt it, because it is a little bit easier to get messed up and confused. So starting with that larger quantity on top, and we're going to multiply that times 21. So 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 1 is 1, because you want to make sure that you're doing each digit times each of them. So 1 times 0 is going to be 0 again, and 1 times 2 is 2. So that first row should be 2010 because you are multiplying it by 1. So now this is a little bit different because we're starting in the tens place. You want to make sure that you put your placeholder there because you want to make sure your first digit that you're writing down is in the tens place. So 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 2 is 4. And then we're going to add these digits together. 0 plus 0 is 0, 1 plus 0 is 1, 2 plus 0 is 2, 2 plus 0 is 2, and 4 plus nothing is 4. And then again, we have the correct answer. And then also, if you'd like to check your work using division, we're going to go kind of in that backwards motion where we start with our answer, we divide it by one of our numbers, and then we get the other number as our answer. So we're going to start with 42,210. So 42,210, and we're going to be dividing that by 21. So 21 cannot go into 4. And also remember, when you're using this method to check, you want this to be your answer, okay? So instead of trying to think outside the box and really try and figure out, because 41 we know can go into 42, the best place to start is going to be 2 times because we want our answer to be 2010. So we want to double check and make sure that this goes in 2 times. So 21 times 2 is 42. So we know that this will be a 2 and this will be 42. We're going to subtract and get 0. Bring down your 2. And remember, this is kind of a misconception sometimes. We think that because 21 can't go into 2, we have to bring another number down. But we just have to tell ourselves 21 goes into 2 0 times. Okay, and then we move on. 21 times 0 is 0. We subtract and we get 2. and then we bring down a number. So every time that you bring down a number, it should only have one number being brought down at a time. 21 goes into 21 one time, and if you notice, we're on the right track so far. 21 times 1 is 21. We subtract, we get 0, and we bring down our 0. Because we brought a number down, we still have to say 21 goes into 0, 0 times. 21 times 0 is 0. We subtract, and we're left with nothing. All right. So we've done 3 different strategies, and we've checked our work. So at this point, we want to write down what our answer is. So our answer, we're asking how many words we read, and we read 42,210 words. Remember, it's asking for the unit, and your unit is words. So now for your equation. This one's pretty simple because we're just multiplying, so you're just going to show that 20,010, or 2010, I'm sorry, times 21 gave me 42,210. And don't forget in your explain section that you want to make sure that you're really explaining how you knew what to do, what clue words there were that told you that you needed to multiply, and why you chose not to add or subtract. So really go into detail about what your thinking was and why you chose to do what you did.